Hey, friends, this is your friend Kent C. Dodds, and I'm joined by my friend Sir Kenneth Wheeler. Say hi, Ken.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Super happy to have Ken here. So Ken, I want to everybody should know who you are, and if they don't yet, this is awesome that they're listening to this because they're about to get a load of awesomeness.
They're gonna get put on.
So yeah, yeah. So Ken, can you introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us not just the technical stuff, but like whatever you want to say about yourself.
Sure. I'm Ken Wheeler. I am a UI developer at an unnamed hedge fund. Uh,
Redacted.
yeah, redacted, a hedge fund that I'm not allowed to say the name, but I digress. I'm an electronic musician, a meat enthusiast, um, a dad to some daughters, also a tank top enthusiast. I think that wraps it up, right? I mean,
You're a rapper turned coder, right?
that's right. That's right.
So cool stuff. International speaker, open source library author, and
I made a couple
yeah,
bad libraries.
yeah, yeah. The carousel that you still find on websites all over the place.
That's right. I saw a funny tweet about that the other day.
Yeah,
Somebody was
yeah.
complaining
Whoa.
about carousels without naming them, and
Oh, yeah.
I was like, my apologies, sir.
That was my bad. Well, oh, and you do plenty of hardware. Like you got your crossbow thing too.
Yeah, yeah. So I did Arduinos for a while, and everybody just makes the light blink,
Mm.
but I always wanted to build something more than that. So I built a crossbow. I built with Halloween coming up, I got to come up with a new one. But last Halloween, I took
Mm.
a plastic skull and like drilled it out and put LEDs in its eyes and made like an animatronic like moving skull. It was
Awesome, dude.
fun. And I most recently made a MIDI controller, like an arcade button MIDI controller, and that was
Oh,
really fun
nice.
because a lot of the time like the Arduino stuff isn't like wildly complicated. It's
Mm-hmm.
actually like the whole rest of it, like you're mech engineering, so to say. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I got a bunch of enclosures and I tried to make it work and failed magnificently. Um,
That's the best way to fail, right?
yeah, I mean,
If you're gonna fail, may as well do it magnificently.
I trashed like $100 worth of enclosures until I was just like, I should 3D print this, right? And then I did,
Mm.
and it worked out swimmingly. So now I have this 3D printer behind me, and yeah, next thing I want to do. That if you're gonna do Arduino and you're gonna build real things, that's like the only way to do it.
Yeah, 3D print all this stuff. Like I took my kids to like a farmer's market thing, and there were these guys there who had 3D printed just a ton of stuff, and that's what they were selling. Um, and they ended up so that they had this box of whistles that they printed, and they're like, "You can have one of these, but your parents might not want you to
Yeah.
want you to have
Do
these."
you have a 3D printer?
Uh, I don't. I've thought about it. I'm not sure what I would do with it though.
It's fun because you can make like like, do you remember when we were kids and you would put like a quarter in the thing at the doors at the food store, and you'd get like a
Mm,
spider ring or something like that?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like that kind of stuff. Like you can just make your kids, and it prints in like 10 minutes. So I can just print my kids like these like fun like little plastic toys. They make them like rings or
Mm.
articulating sharks or that sort of thing.
Oh, that's cool,
Instant
dude.
toy.
I feel like I find that stuff all over my house already. It'd just get worse if I got a 3D
It's gotten
printer.
so much worse.
Yeah. Like all of those kids meal toys and stuff, they're just everywhere.
I just have buckets and
That's
buckets of them.
yeah. That's parenting. It's good. So, cool. Hey, so Ken, I've got some cool thing. Like, so if you don't know Ken already, if you don't follow Ken on Twitter, you're really missing out because Ken has some like really down to earth stuff to share. And Ken, you have like a pretty cool backstory, like of your personal development career and getting involved in open source and speaking and doing things that kind of get yourself a little out of your shell. Can you tell a little bit about like what motivates you to do things that are uncomfortable?
um I'm not a big fan of saying no to things. Generally speaking, if you say yes to things, um, again, generally speaking, good things happen. It depends on what things you say yes to. But uh, yeah, I think that there's nothing wrong with taking opportunities, right? So if somebody asks you to
Mm,
speak, why wouldn't you? You know, like it's an opportunity, right? And that applies to a lot of things, right? Like I've been asked to speak and like, I was kind of like scared about it, but I was like, whatever. But like anytime you have something like that where like work, if they're like, can we have a volunteer? Like I'll do it, if they want you to like travel
mhm.
somewhere or we need somebody to lead the team or something, you know, I'm a big fan of just going for it. It usually works out.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. So can you tell us, like, an experience specifically of when, you were asked to do something at work and you volunteered for it and what the result was?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm trying to think of a different one, but yeah, I mean, like when I came onto the current place, right? They were like, they're like, "Hey, do you want to do some internal trainings?" And I was like, "Absolutely," right? And I was like, "What are you kidding me?" So, my first couple weeks when I go there, I work remotely, but I work 1 week from Chicago a month, so I'm in the office 1 week a
Mm,
month, and for a little while there, every week that I was in, I would schedule a training session. There were a lot of developers that were coming from different languages and stuff like that. So I would come in and teach, JavaScript basics, React basics, React architecture, performance, things like that. Like a lot of like the prerequisites for like writing professional JavaScript things like debugging, um, performance monitoring, profiling, that sort of thing.
mhm.
And it was really good. Like I mean, surely it had to have been good professionally, but it was also cool because you get to know everybody a little more. If you just show up and
Mm,
you're dude at desk, I mean, you might see your immediate peers around you or whatever, but like, once you're in the room and you're getting people engaged
mhm.
and you're talking to people, they're saying hi to you in the hall and like you just spread out a little. So I think that worked out pretty well for me thus far.
Cool, yeah. So, I think that, kind of reaching outside of your comfort zone can have some positive impacts on not only your career, but, also yourself personally. Are like, what would you say to somebody who's like, "Well, I don't, I'm pretty happy and content with my life, just, going to my desk, doing my job, filling out those tickets, whatever, and then going home, watching Netflix, and going to bed." And like, they just kind of are struggling to be motivated to do much more than
I
that.
mean, if
What
that's what
what do
somebody
you
likes to
like? What
do
thoughts do you have around that?
and that's what they want to do, then God bless them. Let them do their thing, right? Um, but if they
Hmm.
have aspirations or ambitions, things that they'd like to do, but are apprehensive about it, don't know where to start, think it's out of their league, that sort of thing. That would be the kind of person that I would tell to go for it, right? Like I'll tell you a quick anecdote, right?
Mm,
So almost every demo that I've ever done at a conference has been wildly out of my league
mm.
technologically, right? Like you're familiar with conference driven development?
Yeah. Oh, dude, I do that all the time.
Yeah. So what I'll do is like I'll take something that I want to do, right? And then I'll pitch it as the talk, right?
Mhm.
Not having thought through how this would become real, right? And then it forces your hand, right? So like that robot crossbow thing, right? I had no idea how, I mean, I knew how to do like Arduino, but I had no idea how to mechanically do that. And it was a lot of trial and error. Same thing with that MIDI controller. Same thing, like very recently, I spoke in London and you know AutoTune?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to put it in the browser.
Nice. Yeah, cool.
And I didn't know if it was possible. It is. But um, what you have to do is you take it and you compile it from C to WASM and then you run it in an audio worklet in the browser.
Mm.
And we were getting close there for a minute and it was not working. And then I would come down like the first like hour or two of every morning. I'd be down in my office, like kind of working on it,
Mhm.
like saying, "All right, let's see what we can do today." Da, da, da. And like I don't know C that well. I don't
Mhm.
know WASM that well, and I surely don't know audio workloads that well.
Mhm.
But what I did know is that I wanted autotune in the browser,
Uh-huh.
right? Because like I just saw the light at the end of the tunnel was an amazing demo where I could get up there live and just totally be T-Pain. And I was like, this has to happen. It's too cool for it not to happen.
Mhm.
So just learned enough about each to make it happen, and just went for it, and it worked out. And I can't think of a time that it hasn't worked out. It's gotten close. The autotune was probably the closest it had come.
Mhm.
Yeah, I started the crossbow a little while back, right? Just to for a little safety buffer.
Mhm.
Um, but the autotune that was cutting it close. I almost didn't pull that off.
Yeah, that's one thing I've told people to that the conference-driven development thing is a good idea, but I normally mention that you probably wanna make sure the thing you want to do is possible first. So, like, there was this one time I wanted to speak at an Angular conference in London, but I couldn't travel, and so I pitched this idea where I would have somebody who's there in London just set up a laptop for me on stage, and I would start out with just like an audio feed, and then and a video like my screen feed, and then I'd code up like a video feed for myself. So like in Angular, let's code this up together, and then like by the end of the talk, you're actually looking at my face on the webcam through this app that I build. I wasn't selected, but it seemed like a good idea, but I wasn't sure how, like I knew nothing about WebRTC or any of those technologies, but at least like you want to know that you're not going to propose how to build a rocket that goes to Mars in JavaScript.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, it's something that's within vague possibility.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But that conference-driven development, like, I I feel like it could be a little anxiety-inducing. Did you ever feel that? Like, were you ever nervous about, or like, I guess, where did you come up with the courage to start proposing conference talks and putting yourself into a potentially anxiety-inducing situation?
So so I think the first one, my first talk, I just got asked to do, and I was like, absolutely, I'll do it. Right? It was a local conference, and I was terrified. And even to this day, when I'm up there on stage, I always have this like, we're really doing this, aren't we? And
Yeah.
like I get up there, I'm like, this was such a better idea in retrospect. Like,
Yeah, it seemed like a good idea at the time, but
and then you just go for it. But it's awesome afterwards, right?
Mhm.
I've had talks go good and talks go bad, but even if it went poorly, you still got up there and did it,
Mhm.
right? Like there's something to be
There's some
said for
satisfaction
getting up
from
there
that.
and doing it, right? Even if it's not
Yeah.
the best talk in the world, right? Like, and I don't think I'll ever give the best talk in the world, but
Mhm.
you don't need to, right? You could just get
Yeah.
up there
No,
and
that's
and do your thing, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but the good ones are dope. Like real,
yeah.
somebody's like, "That was an awesome talk," and that's a cool feeling.
Yeah, totally. Well, and often the crowds are big enough that somebody in the crowd is going to get something out of it, even if it's just you, but, like, often it's gonna be more than just you. It's unlikely that you're talking to a crowd of people who know everything you're going to talk about, and somebody's going to enjoy it, and at the end of the day, like, you're you're the one who's able to say, "Yeah, I went up there and talked to people." Like the 30 people at the meetup or the 300 people at the conference or 1,000 people, whatever. Not all of them can say that they stood up in front of a group of people and did something awesome, right?
So what I always tell people is, uh, despite what you might think, the vast majority of people out there don't know the subject that you're talking about.
Mhm.
People are always afraid that somebody's going to stand up and call BS on them or something like that, which never happens. But
Yeah, yeah.
maybe it happened like once or twice, and then the person got thrown out of the conference. But like never
Uh-huh.
happens, right? And then I'm like, so like most of these people. don't know the subject that you're going to talk about, and if they do, they don't know it in the detail that you're about to explain it. And on the off
Mhm.
chance that a couple people do, they're going to be sitting there rooting for you because that's their jam.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
it's you really can't go wrong.
Totally. And like it's not like I think we have in our minds that people want us to fail for some reason. I'm not sure why we get that feeling, but I think some of us do sometimes. And I don't know any like non jerk in the world who wants you to fail. Anybody who wants you to fail is just absolutely not nice, not a nice
I mean,
person.
even people that I don't particularly care for, I don't wish them failure.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Well, and especially when you're like when you're watching their talk, it's not like I want them to waste my time, right? Like I want them to make good use of my time, so I'm rooting for them to do a good job.
yeah, let's see what they have to say. I've been
Totally.
pleasantly
So
surprised a
it
couple times, to be honest.
yeah, in yourself too, right?
Almost every single time.
Yeah. So it's not just like speaking though, or teaching. What are some other areas where you feel like people should just go for it and they're not? And what do you think is holding people back from just going for whatever it is that they're trying to do?
So I think there's two facets to it, right? There's two planes of things that you can do, at least for the purposes of this conversation, and that's intellectual and creative, right? So for me, I struggle with the intellectual path, right? Because like, um, I could get on a stage and be like rapping or something like that and be fine. But if I have to get on a
Mm,
stage and be intellectually vulnerable, right? Like if I get on a stage and I'm rapping, right, no one is like, this man's not conjugating his verbs properly, you know. But like there's a
yeah.
very real fear when you're up there like talking about technology that you're going to be wrong, that
Mm,
there's going to be misinformation, right? Whether it's, like a bad idea or if it's just you're flat out technically wrong, right? Which is terrifying.
right. Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
you're
Totally.
you're in a room with smart people.
I've been there.
Some people are so smart. Like
Mm,
I remember one time I'm giving this talk, and it was at this New York OCaml meetup, and I was talking about like building React Native apps with Reason, and
mm,
like one of like the main OCaml guys, Yaron Minsky, was in the front row, and then the creator of Buckle Script was behind him, and then like the
mm,
Reason team were off to the left, and I was like,
dude.
yeesh. I'm like, all right, got to keep this one honest. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's like a scary thing. And
You know what? But even, like, as a maintainer, so I can sort of put myself in their shoes when I see somebody give a talk about React testing library or something like that, where it's something that I've created and they're gonna talk about it. And when I'm in that situation, I'm not sitting there, like, leaning back like, "Alright, show me how good you are, like, let me pick apart your talk." Instead, I'm looking at it and thinking, "Okay, I hope that my documentation was good enough and that I did a good job so that this person could learn well enough that they could
they
teach
don't
it
have
to
anything
everybody."
bad to
So
say
it's
about it.
still like yeah, 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 exactly. So it's still like the maintainers that are, watching your talk or whatever, they're still rooting for you to do a good job. Like they want you to create a resource that they can hand to somebody else
Yeah.
too.
So the other thing is the creative stuff, right? Which is different, and it's like when people do creative things, right? A lot of the time that's like an expression of themselves or it's something special to them. So putting that out there and
Mm,
having that available for criticism is also frightening. Whether it's like music or
mhm,
art or something like that. It's a completely different thing, right? Like I might hold something that I've developed creatively a little bit closer than something that I'm speaking about intellectually, right? Like if you
mm.
like wrote a song and then somebody's like, "This is like the worst song ever," I was like, "Ouch," like,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I think a lot of the
totally.
apprehension comes from those two setups right there. But I mean, in both of them, you really just got to go for it, right? Because there's not that fictional heckler most of the time, unless you're on Hacker News, where I can't make any promises.
No, yeah, man, just stay away from Hacker News. That's, like, advice
Yeah,
that
I mean
everybody should
that's like the worst in
should
general
follow.
too. But yeah, I mean, it's as far as
Totally.
like doing those things, right? Like take for example, like something like you want to write a blog post, right? A lot of people will they'll see themselves here without a blog post, and then they see themselves in the future, you know, with a written published blog post. But it seems like there's so much distance between where you are right now and this lovely finished blog
Mm,
post. Um,
mhm,
and my advice there, right, is to write the first paragraph. Right?
mm,
That's like the hardest thing, right? Like if you force yourself, like when I'm making music, right? Like I want like a very dank beat, right? And it's a little bit of a journey to a very dank beat. But like if you're sitting there, like
mhm,
just lay the drum track, just get it started, right? Because it's like you have to take the smallest step, and then it's a series of small steps until here you have a blog post, here you have, you know, a piece of music.
mhm. So it's like when you say just go for it, the best way you find to do that is to you don't have to break the entire task down to small steps. You just think, what's the smallest thing that I can do to get me
Yeah,
started?
yeah, and to get it done a little bit easier, there's a thing that I've been doing lately that I think is pretty cool. Have you ever heard of the Principles book?
No, I don't think so.
So this dude Ray Dalio, who runs this hedge fund, not the one that I'm at, but
Hmm.
he has this thing called Principles, right? And it's like a bunch of like it's like it's a book that people read and, you know, apply to business and what have you, things like that. But I did have one main takeaway from that, and I've been thinking about it a lot lately, and that's whenever you want to do something, right? Like the first thing you should do is take stock of the reality of the situation, right? So it's like you know, identify uh you know, what's real and true about the situation. So it's like um if I want to put auto tune in the browser, right? First of all, is that possible? Right? It's like vaguely possible. And then you know, what does it take to get in there, right? And then it's like this is going to need to be WASM, right? So like when you identify like what the reality of the situation is, rather than just being like, oh, this is hard, this is impossible, this is going to be tough, like what does it actually take to do this, right?
Hmm.
And then you can start taking the smallest steps. For me it was like learning like enough like C and M scripting uh, to get started,
Mhm.
start researching that sort of thing. But for, you know, that could apply um, globally to almost anything, right? It's like you want to
Hmm.
run a marathon, right? Like if you're not a runner, the first thing that you need to do is take a very long walk,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know, provided there's no physical disability that would not let you run a marathon or something.
Sure. Yeah.
But you know, that would also be like, you know, taking account of the reality of the situation. Like, you know, like say like you were disabled or something, like, you know, you're not going to run it, but you could, you know, wheelchair it or something like that. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, you have
Yeah.
to work within, you know, your actual bounds.
Yeah, absolutely. But being self-aware of that, I think is important, whether it's something physical, like you mentioned, or if it's, you have this super anxious feeling when you're standing up in front of a group of people. So maybe you can, if you really want to get there, then you can take smaller steps and stand up in front of a group of stuffed animals or what whatever
Stuffed
it is.
animals, you could do it for a peer group. You could go to a local
Mm-hmm.
meetup, and next thing you know, you're at a conference speaking. Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you like you slowly learn to cope with that situation, or like whatever it is, like you want to start working out, but you feel uncomfortable with groups of other people at the gym. So you find ways to change yourself, and I think that's maybe part of what at least that's something that I truly believe is that like we are malleable people, we're malleable beings. We can change our nature, and it's just something that takes persistence and time and intentional effort.
you know what's funny though about all that is, you know, like speaking or working out, right? Like speaking never gets not scary.
That's
And
true.
working
Yeah.
out never stops being painful and exhausting, right? Like you see people speaking, you're like, oh, they're not scared. You see somebody like running down the road, you're like, wow, this guy's it's a breeze for this character, right?
Mm.
Um, but no matter what it is, right? Like it still sucks. Like for them,
Yeah.
like even at the highest level, it still sucks. You know,
Mm.
they're just dealing with it magnificently.
Yeah, yeah. They've trained their mind and their body to cope with that so that they can, achieve at that level. And there's nothing this reminds me of another thing, like people are sometimes amazed when I tell them that I listen to podcasts at 3 times the speed. They're like, "How do you even understand anything?" And I've been listening to podcasts for years, and at first it was 1x, and then I found out you could speed it up, so I was like 1.5, then 1.75 and 2, and eventually you work your way up and, like, you train your brain. But, like, people who are blind and use screen readers and stuff, they listen to stuff at, like, 20x. It's
Really?
crazy. Yeah, no joke, man. Like
That's wild.
14 to 20x, like, yeah, it's outrageously amazing what our brains are capable of. And so, yeah, like you can, with small and simple steps, you can get yourself to, the place that you want to be. And actually, this is something I've been getting into Elon Musk a lot recently because he's just an inspirational person, for me in some ways. But one thing that he is like way into is just like, he says something that everybody says is impossible, like we're going to go to Mars in a few years, or we're going to build an electric car that people are going to buy, and people say, well, no, you can't do that. And he says, well, tell me like the physics that tells me that that's impossible. And there's no physics that tells you this is impossible. You're just like, you're afraid there's FUD, or whatever it is. And so he says, no, no, like if it's physically possible, then we can make it happen. And so you break down these big scary things to, the physically possible thing that you can do, or mentally possible, or whatever it is, and work your way to, the place that you want to be. But like it really comes down to just going for it, at the start. Like you're not going to get there if you don't
Yeah, I
go
mean, he
for
does
it.
that all the time, right? Like, you know, we're not
Mhm.
quite on Mars, but like if you look at some of the stuff, like these are definitely precursor technologies that are requirements for going to Mars. Or, you know, you look at Tesla,
Mhm.
like the battery technology, right? Like you break it down and take the first step and cover your prerequisites, and suddenly it's achievable.
Mhm.
I gotta
Yeah,
know, are
absolutely.
you still afraid when you speak?
Oh, dude, are you kidding? Yeah, I'm totally. So, like, I've gotten a lot more comfortable, like, leading up to it and stuff, but, like, especially when the speaking, like, when it comes up close, like, the day of especially, or maybe the day before, I start, like, breathing heavier and, like, when I'm thinking about it, and then, like, especially minutes up before I get up there and I'm seeing people gather or whatever, and yeah, like I feel really, really like fight or flight
Yeah.
kind of thing. And but I get up there, and once I say, "Hey, my name is Kent C. Dodds, and I'm
As soon
here
as you
to
say your
talk
name.
about X." Yeah, you just say your name, yeah, totally, and then you're like, "Okay, I'm good." Um, and there have been times where even during the talk, I still feel uncomfortable, and I've kind of worked my way out of that, mostly, unless things aren't going very well.
That's the worst when you get popped out of your groove, like there's like an AV issue or something
Mm,
like that. And you're starting to, you're like,
yeah,
all
yeah.
right, so and then like your whole like momentum was shattered.
Yeah, yeah. But that's another thing that over time you learn to cope with that stuff too. And so if there's something that you want to do, you just go for it in the small step where you get started on the path. Um, and yeah, actually, so this reminds me of, there's a book by Brandon Sanderson called Oathbringer, and in it, this guy, I think actually, I wonder if it's the first one, but it's the Stormlight Archive trilogy. But there's this character in there who is asked the question, "What's the most important step a man can take?" And like that question is kind of hanging out there the whole book. And then toward the end, he says the most important step a man can take is the first
True
step.
story.
And yeah, I think that is kind of a that applies to what we're talking about here. Is like it's not possible to take the second step or even the last step unless you've taken that first step, and finding a simple way to take that first step and just going for it is is critical to becoming the person that you want to be.
True story.
So cool. We're down on our time here, Ken. It was awesome to chat with you. Is there anything else that you want to talk about before we wrap things up?
No, dude, it was awesome. Thank you for having me.
Dude, it's a pleasure. I always love chatting with you. I'm super sad we're not going to actually see each other for I don't even
I
know
don't know the
how
next
long,
conf,
but we'll
but
see.
you're gonna have
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
fun at React Rally for me, right?
Yeah, it's gonna be a blast. That's so the time we were recording this, React Rally's in 2 days. This will probably be published in like, I don't know, a month, maybe or two. But yeah, it was fun, I'm sure. So here's our just as we wrap up here, here's the homework or the call to action for everybody listening. Where we want you to, do something to improve yourself technically or personally, whatever. So here's what we want you to do. Take out a piece of paper and write down 3 things you've been holding yourself back from, whether it be fear or just feeling inadequate or whatever that is. And choose one of those 3 things that you've written down, and then write down the steps that you can take to accomplish that. Maybe just write down the first step, and then go make that happen. Go for
Go
it.
for it.
Cool. All right, man. Well, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure. Where can people find you online, Ken?
Uh, you can find me at soundcloud.com/the Ken Wheeler.
Booyah. No, like legit people go listen. I Ken's got some sweet music. I even use Ken's music for my Dev Tips with Kent series on YouTube. It's great. So yeah, go listen to Ken's
It's
stuff. It's
also
cool.
Ken_Wheeler on Twitter, but don't open that in front of kids.
It's not safe for work.
Not safe
Not
for
safe for kids.
life.
Cool. All right. Hey, thanks, Ken. It was awesome. And for everybody else, we'll see y'all later.
Later, alligators.